Hey everyone, it's Dr. A, and in this video we're going to discuss the ABO Blood Typing System. And specifically, it's this system that helps us understand which blood types can receive from and donate to other blood types. So first, let's discuss why we call this the ABO Blood Typing System. We do this because each of these letters, the A, B, and O, represent the 4 different blood types that exist. Specifically, we have individuals who have type A blood, others who have type B blood, those who have type AB blood, and those who have type O blood. Now, as we navigate these varying blood types, let's discuss an important term, which is antigens. And it's important to note that you may oftentimes hear of these referred to as cell surface antigens. And all that means is that antigens help us identify and distinguish between different types of cells. Now, the way I like to think of antigens are like name tags that you wear in a meeting that look like this. In essence, it's a sign that identifies what something is or who someone is. So if we think about this practically for a moment, if you were a red blood cell, you would be required to wear this name tag, which represents the antigen, so that everyone knows who or what you represent. So your name tag might say, "Hello, my name is type A." So as we've alluded to, someone who has type A blood will have type A antigens. So let's take a look at what that looks like on a traditional red blood cell. Now, on the type B red blood cell, we'll have antigens that identify it as such, and we'll showcase how that is viewed on this red blood cell. And next, for individuals with type AB blood, we'll see both an A and a B antigen on the surface of these red blood cells, and it'll be shown like this. Now, on our last red blood cell here, which represents type O blood, we don't have an A or B antigen on the surface. So it's the absence of those antigens that represent this blood type, which is again type O. Now that we've covered the red blood cells and their respective antigens, we need to discuss the antibodies that are associated with blood. So let's start with discussing a term first, and that term is immunoglobulin. And if we're to break this word into its 2 parts, we'd see that the first part of it, immuno, represents the immune system. And so this term represents the fact that our antibodies play a role in our body's immune response. Now, the last part of this term is globin, which is a term that represents the word protein. So an immunoglobulin is an immune protein. Now, for individuals who have type A blood, they have an antibody that has the letter B associated with it. And so, because we would call this antibody B, we're going to write it as anti-B. For individuals who have type B blood, they're going to have an antibody associated with their blood that has the letter A connected to it. And because we call this antibody A, we're going to write it as anti-A. Now, as we move over to the next blood cell, it might easily look as if we're saying that individuals with type AB blood have no antibodies, but that's certainly not the case. They do have antibodies. However, their antibodies will not have the letter A or B associated with it. So in this space, we'll write no anti-A or anti-B antibodies. Now, as we move over to the next red blood cell, which is type O, the antibodies associated with it are antibody A and B. And so because both of these letters are associated with it, we'll list anti-A and anti-B. Now, there are a few key principles that we want to keep in mind when we start thinking about which blood types can donate to and receive from other blood types. So for someone with type A blood, their antibodies will attack any red blood cell antigen that has the letter B on it. Now, this is the case because the individual with type A blood has an antibody that we call anti-B. And so if something is anti-B or against the letter B, that means it will attack it. The same is true for the individual with type B blood. We've named their antibody anti-A, and because we've named it anti-A, that means it's going to be against or will attack any red blood cell antigen that has the letter A associated with it. And for individuals with type AB blood, their antibodies aren't against any red blood cell antigen that has the letters A or B associated with it. And finally, for individuals with type O blood, their antibodies are against any red blood cell antigen that has the letters A or B associated with it. So let's look at an example together. Milton is a 20-year-old male who recently sustained a horrific sports injury, fracturing his femur. In preparation for surgery, the surgical team ensured they had an ample supply of blood on hand because a blood transfusion was likely. So let's assume that Milton has type B blood. So here's the question. Which of the following blood types can he safely receive from without the risk of a transfusion reaction? So feel free to pause the video and, utilizing the information we've discussed, determine which type of blood Milton could receive. Now that you've had a moment to think about it, let's debrief. So on the far left-hand side, we have a sample of Milton's blood, which is again type B blood, with anti-A antibody. Now as we go through this, let's start with the potential donor that has type A blood. We'll notice offhand that this individual has an A antigen on the surface of their red blood cell. And because Milton has an antibody that is anti-A, Milton's immune system would reject blood from an individual with type A blood. So we can safely say that Milton could not receive blood from this individual, so we'll cross it off the list. As we move down to type B blood, we'll notice offhand that this is Milton's blood type. So in general, Milton should be able to receive blood from his own blood type. Now, realistically, we would need to consider what happens when individuals have positive and negative blood. But for now, we'll note that he can safely receive type B blood from a donor. Next is type AB blood. If Milton were to receive type AB blood, his anti-A antibody would attack the red blood cell antigen on the surface of this blood type because of the letter A we've associated with it. So for this blood type, we can safely eliminate someone with type AB blood donating to Milton. So for now, we're only saying Milton could receive blood from someone who has his own blood type, but let's check in with a type O donor. On the surface of its red blood cells, we don't have an A or B associated with it, so Milton's antibody A wouldn't have an A antigen to attack. So our answer here is that Milton could receive from an individual with type B and type O blood. So let's look at one additional example. April is a 23-year-old female who recently gave blood to the American Red Cross when they visited campus. After donating blood, she was told that she has type AB blood. So here's the question. Which of the following blood types can she receive from, and which can she potentially donate to? So feel free to pause the video and, utilizing the information we've discussed, determine which type of blood April could donate to and which she could receive from. Now that you've had a moment to think about it, let's debrief and let's talk about which blood types April could receive from. So on the far left-hand side, we have a sample of April's blood, which is again type AB blood. And because of this blood type, she doesn't have either an anti-A antibody or an anti-B antibody. Now, as we go through this, let's start with a potential donor that has type A blood. We'll notice offhand that this individual has an A antigen on the surface of their red blood cell. And because April doesn't have an antibody that is anti-A, her immune system would receive blood donated by an individual with type A blood. As we move down to type B blood, we'll notice again that this individual has a B antigen on the surface of their red blood cell. And because April doesn't have an anti-A or anti-B antibody, her immune system would accept blood donated by this individual. And moving on to the next one, which is type AB blood, we can say that April is able to receive blood from her own blood type. But again, realistically, and for all of the scenarios we described previously, we would need to consider what happens when individuals have positive and negative blood types. And I'll link to a video here that helps us consider the Rh factor in blood donations and or transfusions. And now, looking at type O blood, we noticed that there aren't any A or B antigens on the surface of this red blood cell. And because April doesn't have any anti-A or anti-B antibodies, her immune system wouldn't attack red blood cells that don't have an A or B antigen on it. So what we just uncovered is that April's blood type, individuals with type AB blood in general, are considered to be universal recipients because their blood type can receive from type A, B, AB, and type O blood. But again, we'd also need to consider an individual's Rh factor, and with this we'll uncover that it's truly individuals with type AB positive blood that are universal recipients, and individuals who have O negative blood that are universal donors. Now, let's shift gears and ask, which blood types could April donate to? If we have an individual with type A blood, we can see that they have anti-B antibody. And so this individual's blood would reject any red blood cell with a B antigen on it. And unfortunately, April has a B antigen on the surface of her red blood cell. So the individual with type A blood wouldn't be able to receive blood from April. Now, we'll strike through it as a potential option. Next, we have an individual with type B blood, and as shown, we know that this individual has an anti-A antibody. And as such, this individual's blood would attack any red blood cell that has an A antigen. So we'll have to strike through this as a potential option. And as we've alluded to before, someone with type AB blood can receive blood from someone that has type AB blood. And April indeed has type AB blood. Now, last on our list is type O, and this individual has anti-A and anti-B antibodies. And so their immune system would attack any blood cell that has an A or B antigen on its surface. And so because of this, the individual with type O blood could not receive blood from April. So we can also strike through this option. So our answer here is that April could receive from each of the blood types, A, B, AB, and O. And in terms of who she can donate to, we've uncovered that she can only donate to type AB blood. Well, thank you for watching this video, and I'll look forward to connecting with you again in the next one.